Hello everybody, I'm Justin.
And I'm Nick.
We are Fantasy Football in the Zone. So now that Week 12 is finally here, it all started with the Thursday night game, and the New Orleans Saints defeated the Atlanta Falcons with a final score of 17-13. The guy we were disappointed that didn't play was Darren Sproles. We expected him to have a big game, but he didn't play.
But Peter Thomas had a nice day in PPR leagues.
Yeah, and Falcons just been so bad against the run. But a guy I want to talk about is Matt Ryan. Drew Brees, we all know, is a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and
every year, pretty much,
and in the real NFL.
Yeah.
But Matt Ryan did throw more passing yards than Drew Brees, but his problem is that he has 0 touchdowns. He has too many picks this season and
he's nothing more than a mid-range 2, high-end 2.
I think he could be a low-end 1, but depending on the matchup, or high-end 2. But you have to. I think you should look at the waiver wire right now if you have Matt Ryan and play the matchup with them. But now let's move on and go to the star quarterbacks.
The 2 guys that I like are Case Keenum and Colin Kaepernick. They both have great matchup in the Raiders and the Redskins, both awful pass defensive. And Colin Kaepernick can also run.
2 guys I like this week is Mike Glennon and Tom Brady. Mike Glennon is going to have a big game against the Lions, and the only way you can beat the Lions is if your quarterback has a big game. And yes, they have Bobby Rainey, which I'll talk to him later. But a guy I really want to talk about is Tom Brady. Tom Brady this week, I think he's going to have one of the biggest fantasy quarterback days this week. But this week will be his bounce back, and he's back for good. And he's versing the Denver Broncos. Yes, last week he had 300 yards, which is a lot, but 1 touchdown. This week he has to throw more than 1 touchdown against the Denver Broncos. The only way you can beat the Broncos is by throwing a lot of touchdowns and scoring a lot of points, and that's what he will do this week, and he'll have a big day for you and your fantasy team, so hopefully he's on your team.
So let's go to the guys that I don't like. The 2 sick QBs are Joe Flacco and Ryan Tannehill. They both really haven't been more than mid-range 2, high-end 2, depending the matchup. And they both have nightmare matchups.
2 guys I don't like this week is Phillip Rivers and Big Ben. It's hard to sit somebody who had that big of a week like Big Ben did, but they're going up against the Browns, and the Browns been very good defensively, and the wide receivers on the Steelers have tough matchups, such as Joe Hayden. And Phillip Rivers, he's hard to sit. He's been so good all year, but I would sit him if you have a better matchup.
Let's move on to the starting running backs. I like Ben Tate and Chris Johnson. I expect big rushing days from Ben Tate and Chris Johnson. They both have great matchups.
Chris Johnson's a great matchup, and I think he'll bounce back this week.
Expect 1 to 2 touchdowns with 110 yards.
I like this week Frank Gore and Andre Brown. Andre Brown has a good matchup against the Cowboys, but Frank Gore had a bad week last week, and he's going up against Washington, and Washington is one of the worst in the league against rushing. Now let's go to start. Sit running backs.
I don't like Ray Rice or Danny Woodhead. Danny Woodhead has been pretty good all season, but he got the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have been shutting down running backs all year. I also don't like Ray Rice because he hasn't done anything all year really besides last week, and he has a tough matchup in the Jets.
Two running backs I don't like this week is Bobby Rainey and Chris Ivory. It's so hard to sit somebody like Bobby Rainey who's coming off a huge week with 3 touchdowns and 196 rushing yards, but I do think he's a nice waiver wire pickup if you have like Marshawn Lynch and somebody who has a bye. But I think he could be a decent flex option for you. But the thing that scares me is the Detroit Lions front four on the D line.
Yeah.
But he's going to be a nice flex option for you. But I wouldn't expect anything more than that. And
let's move on to start wide receivers. I like Kendall Wright and Danny Woodhead. Danny Amendola. Too many Dannys. I like Danny Amendola because he's gonna have to be in a shootout with the Broncos, so he's gonna get a lot of targets.
Like Tom Brady as well. 2 wide receivers I like is Victor Cruz and Anquan Boldin. Victor Cruz has been disappointing with the touchdowns, and you probably drafted him high and expecting big things. But this week, another bounce back, I think, and he's versing the Dallas Cowboys. In every game they play, there's always points on the board, and it's going to be a shootout. And a sleeper I like this week is Jared Boykin. Him and Scott Tolzien not only have a good week matchup against Minnesota Vikings, but they were in the practice squad together, and I expect they both have good chemistry, and Jared Boykin, I think, is his number 1 target.
let's move on to sit on wide receivers. I don't like Keenan Allen or Mike Wallace. Keenan Allen been pretty hot, but he's going up against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs been pretty good against the pass. And Mike Wallace hasn't done anything all season.
Two guys I don't like are Antonio Brown and Torrey Smith. Two tough matchups, and Antonio Brown's going up against Joe Hayden, and they shut down AJ Green for 2 catches and 7 yards, so that scares me. Now let's move on to the star tight ends. I like Delaney Walker and Vernon Davis. Tight ends are so hard to predict, so you gotta sometimes play studs and play. If you don't have a great one, play matchup a starter. And Delaney Walker is a pretty good matchup. And Vernon Davis, he has been disappointing, but I expect big things against Washington.
The two guys that I like are Jason Ritten and Andrew Corliss. They both have good matchups, and Jason Ritten's going to be in a shootout with the Giants.
Two guys I don't like this week on tight ends are Antonio Gates and Dallas Clark. Yes, you probably can't sit Antonio Gates. He's just too good, and like I said, tight ends are so hard to predict, but I don't like the matchup this week against the Chiefs. And Dallas Clark, I think a nice waiver wire pickup target should be Dennis Pitta. He's practicing, and when he's played, he's been a top 10 tight end, but I don't like the matchup against the Jets.
My sit tight ends are Heath Miller and Colby Fleener. They both have tough matchups, and these guys had high hopes, but they haven't really done anything.
Colby Fleener, he's been playing pretty good, but tough matchup. Yeah. And now let's go to sleeper defense. I like the Ravens. They're probably taking your league, but if not, go get them because they have a good matchup against the Jets who've been too inconsistent for me.
My sleeper D, is the Texans, because
Jacksonville
sucks.
We don't have to say anymore. But they have been impressing lately. Yeah. They got a first win, but I don't trust them.
Start everybody. Thanks for watching.
Leave a comment, ask us questions at FfInTheZone.